Pogacar the alien has been defeated, and by a human. Jubilation and celebration among cycling lovers who at least have witnessed an entertaining first stage in a Giro d'Italia that was expected to be boring, one with a route extremely favourable to the Slovenian monster. It was the Ecuadorian Ineos rider, Jhonatan Narvaez, who was the lucky alpha male able to defeat the disciple of Dracula Gianetti. Pogi, of course, again has been poorly supported by a team far from the level of its leader, one employing more disastrous tactics. Oh, Machin's boys. Everything seemed to indicate that it would be rider 191 who would easily win the pink jersey. The stage was wrapped in a mystical air, with the climb to the Basilica of Superga, and with all the propaganda of the race remembering the 75th anniversary of the air tragedy of the local soccer team, in keeping with the typical Italian tradition of remembering their deceased, one which in the next stage will be magnified even further with the memory of the doped polydrug addict who was dependent on his equally drug-addicted Danish girlfriend. They're always Danish. Pogi loves this mysticism, as he demonstrated in Liège by dedicating the victory to his late mother-in-law and doing so in tears. But, as if that wasn't enough spiritual motivation, Mauro Vansevenant has given the Slovenian, in addition to €2 million, the tour of his dreams to make his stay in Italy a real pleasure. This is something quite usual with RCS. They usually put first stages so that their foreign and highly paid stars can wear pink from the start. It happened with the friend of Dr. Cecchini's son, who destroyed Bini, our Bini, in a proper uphill finish so that he could perform his show while Cecchini's grandchildren enjoyed the hospitality of the Rudhoff brothers. It also happened with Focus in Evenepoel, who was given a time trial ideal for his characteristics, and so he could wear a pink jersey in the documentaries of the YouTuber Average Rob, and later the Belgian kid could catch them fleeing the race in a helicopter. And so the same happens now with Pogi, since Vansevenant had designed an ideal stage for the Slovenian, with several mountainous difficulties, including a very hard climb with ramps of up to 16%, just 3 kilometres from the finish, the hill of San Vito, which may remind us of the famous dance of St. Vitus, the popular disease of the early modern age, when several intoxicated people danced as if they were at a rave party without being able to stop. It seems to be the ideal scenario for Pogi to intoxicate the rest of the riders with his endless dancing on his Colnago. Even the organisation's own Twitter account made jokes about the moment when the world number one was going to attack. That is to say, the screenplay was as if it was already prefabricated for Pogi to be the first leader of the competition. It all began less than 10 kilometres from the start in Vanaria Real, with a breakaway of an excellent level, one which worried the whole peloton. It was formed by men as dangerous as Louis Barret, Andrea Pietrobon, and Nicola Debonachet, with 0 victories as professionals. And there was Filippo Fiorelli, with only 1 victory as a professional in a town race. There was Emmanuel Gebrselassie, with no victories outside the African territory. And there was Lilian Calmejin, the rider who dared to talk about those dangerous final bottles that are causing crashes for cyclists. One who had more than 400 kilometres in escapes, in only 3 days of competition since releasing his anger through Twitter. Faced with such a level of a breakaway, UAE Team Emirates, with some help from Ineos, who were wanting to show that they have the best roster in the Giro, decided to work to never let them get a gap of more than 2.5 minutes. Such a group of very dangerous men for the stage. On the climb to Superga, the riders with the most pedigree, the Eritrean and Mr. Final Bottle, easily got away from the rest, and they gradually increased the gap on a peloton that was pulled by Pogi's mascot, Domen Novak. The race changed at the most difficult climb of the day, the Colla della Maddalena, a second category pass of 7 kilometres, with an average gradient of 6.6%, and whose summit was located just 20 kilometres from the finish. Quickly, Pogi put his guys to work, and then made exactly the same mistake as at Milano-San Remo during the climb to the Cipressa, absolutely burning out all his teammates, who are, by the way, not exactly great climbers. It was, in fact, the Dane, always the Dane, Mikkel Berg, who, with his jersey completely unzipped, set an unleashed pace in front of the huge crowd that had come out to watch the race, the Giro's biggest commercial success for decades. Oh, the European champion of the bizarre depressions had already been wavering before the climb, but Bjerg's killer pace, much like that awful stage through the Pyrenees in the 2022 Tour de France, whittled the peloton of favourites down to less than 30 riders. Among them, Liège runner-up Romain Bardet, who, at the tender age of 34, showed that he wasn't really lying when he claimed that he was going for stage wins and not to stand on the podium in Rome. But also Thymen Arensman, one of the supposed best gregarios of the Ineos team. And yet when there were still 80 men in the pack, well, we saw what happened. It's already known. There's that famous saying of Sergio Agul Arias, "What feels very good to some, feels very bad to others." Neither could follow the pace of Bjerg. There was the darling of the English-speaking press, Luc Plapp, the Australian champion who a week ago was breaking power meters with his watts at Romandie. But there was the problem for Pogi. Only Rafa Majka, within the UAE teammates, could follow the infernal pace of the Dane. Ahead, only Calmegen was hanging on, perhaps trying to find some of his final bottles with his tongue. And then it was time for the UAE team to stretch the seams a little at the start of the competition. It was rather laughable to see the very old Majka try to pull the peloton on the flat for more than 10 kilometres towards the San Vito hill. And then once again Pogi had been left alone, just as he had been on the way to the Poggio in Sanremo. Moonlight Machin and Dracula Gianetti's obsession with smashing pelotons apart and making exhibitions was playing against them, because while Pogi was alone with the pole, teams like Bora or Ineos had several men and several cards to play. And thus a group of outsiders jumped for the stage, like the German Max Schachmann of Bora, the promising Giulio Pellizzari, or the old Italian Damiano Caruso. This group quickly caught up with Calmegen and managed to take a lead of close to 40 seconds before the San Vito hill, which, remember, would be crowned just 3 kilometres from the finish. And then from them, the Italian Nicola Conci of the team sponsored by hair doping and the German double champion of Paris-Nice were getting even more of an advantage. Pogi, meanwhile, was calm but unsupported, and everyone was waiting for his oh-so-predictable attack. And he did it as soon as he arrived in San Vito, looking rather nervous about the race situation, as if he was imbued with that intoxication of 5 centuries ago. But then quickly onto his wheel came a titan, the Ecuadorian Jhonatan Narvaez, who, after a great start to the season, had had a frustrating spring campaign. A spring campaign thwarted by the Belgian-bought Grand Prix Waregem crash, in which he was also involved. But here he re-emerged as a monster, capable of holding off Pogi on a very tough mountain climb after Bjerg's infernal pace on the Maddalena. The Ineos tactic had been the right one, as Narvaez logically didn't do a single turn to help the Slovenian on the climb up the hill. Then the duo quickly caught up with Conci and Schachmann was able to hold the wheel of the day's 2 main protagonists. Narvaez was imitating the late Victor Lafay in the Tour de France 2023, appearing out of nowhere with stratospheric form, in which Pogi, who tried numerous times, could not get rid of him from his wheel, neither on the climb nor on the descent. In the sprint, obviously the Slovenian paid for his effort, and Narvaez appeared with his little steel horse like Jack Nicholson in that dirty hotel room in The Shining, grinning and shouting, "Here's Johnny!" And then he got his second stage win in the Giro d'Italia, and of course the first maglia rosa of the competition. And thus the dream of Vegny and the 4 wankers who wanted Pogi to wear the pink from the first to the last stage like Doper Bunyo did all those years ago, well, it was over. The Slovenian was even beaten by the German of Bora in the sprint. But he also had his positive side. He was superior to the rest of the riders fighting for the general classification, for they arrived with the group 10 seconds behind the leading trio: Tiberi, Thomas, Lutsenko, O'Connor, Martínez and Uijtdebroeks. Then in between was Alex Baudin, the rider who tested positive for tramadol in the 2023 Giro. He finished 4th on a new Van Rijssel miracle. It was overall a great first stage, one where we've seen that Pogi can be beaten, but not because the Slovenian has bad legs or is ill-prepared, but rather because of an unworthy team and, even more pertinent, erroneous directors. Poor alien. Happy Narvaez.